This is Fit Amputee powered by James Robert Fitness, and this is episode 10 of my podcast. And today's guest, I've got Sebastien Bechara. He's involved with Catalan Dragons, who are the reigning European and French champions, and he's most recently competed with England at the Four Nations Championship, where they were winners, and also last year he was European champions with the English side, beating the French side. So, thanks for coming on, Sebastien.
Thank you. See you.
So, if you can tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you got into fitness, and more specifically, Wheelchair Rugby League.
Well, I've always been into fitness. I mean, I've always done a lot of sport since I was very young. So, started with a lot of tennis and swimming, actually. And then got into rugby when I moved to France. I moved to France when I was 10 years old. So, started playing a lot of rugby. And then, obviously, for rugby, you have to start getting stronger and fitter. So, I started going to the gym. And then, so then I had a motorbike accident when I was 18. So after the accident, I went to a rehab center, and then I met Cyril Torres, the captain of the French rugby league team, wheelchair rugby league team, who introduced me to wheelchair rugby and asked me to come and try the sport with them at Catalan Dragons. So obviously went over there to try wheelchair rugby and really enjoyed it. Started playing. You have this. You find the feelings of sport again, and you really get into it and really enjoyed it. And started by I was playing with all the. I mean, they're really good players for Catalan Dragons. 4 of them were part of the French national team, so managed to progress really quickly. And but on the side of that, started going to the gym again, and after a while, we were qualified for European Cup. So when I came over to England, I met Phil Roberts, that was the England coach at the time. He watched the game and invited me to come and do the England trials, and then after that, managed to join the England team. And now I'm right in it, and getting ready for World Cup next year.
And obviously, we talked off air a little bit about it. What is it like? Obviously, you've competed for England. What was it like last year to compete against predominantly a lot of those French guys are your teammates? What was that like?
It was actually very weird because I had been playing with these guys for 3 years, obviously, and seeing them 3 times a week. And so a few of them were really close friends of mine that play all year round with me. And then suddenly being on the other side of them, it was actually very strange. And I still managed to have this really aggressive attitude, and you're just in your game playing wheelchair rugby, and you just don't think about it. You just play on. Yeah.
That's probably true aspect. And obviously, with the accident you have, can you tell the listeners what disability you have now then?
So I had a motorbike accident, and I lost my right leg. Below knee, so I'm a below knee amputee. So I can still do quite a lot of things. I still manage to walk and run, and so that really helps for the gym, etc. And there you go, yeah.
Okay, and then obviously I have had now the privilege of playing against you. What is it now? 2 years. Is there any? Well, obviously I won't pick it up too much, but obviously I'm one of the quicker players in the Welsh side. How would I say it? Did the coaching staff have a plan to say, "Oh, mark this person out," or did you say, "Well, from looking from your perspective, he's one of the better players. You need to worry about a little bit," or did you kind of just to see how I was?
Well, we did. In my memory, we watched your game before playing against you, so we kind of marked out who was who and see where we were supposed to be careful. So obviously the coaches were watching as well, but they didn't actually give us that many instructions. We kind of adapted ourselves, and obviously we noticed very quickly like who is the faster player, or who's the bigger and higher player who will manage to dodge you and etc. So we definitely between ourselves as players, we instructed ourselves to mark who and who, and obviously do everything to stop you getting through. Yeah.
And then obviously from last year's European Championship to the Four Nations this year, have you seen a vast improvement in the standard of play within the home nations?
Of Wales team?
No, I could say across the board.
Well, I definitely thought Wales team improved a lot. Then it's difficult to say for Ireland, who weren't here for Four Nations, unfortunately. And I think Scotland actually regressed a bit. I mean, they were quite a strong team last year in Euros, and I think they just slightly lost against Ireland in the third spot game. I think that's it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they were a strong side last year, and I think this year they were the kind of the weaker side. So I think Scotland actually went down a bit in level, but then Wales definitely improved a lot. I was quite impressed.
Wow. It's. I've been on kind of the outside this season because I missed the Celtic Cup back in what was it, about March, April time. So I've kind of seen it's been kind of a sharp rise, obviously. Over the years, we've been kind of the whipping boys to a certain extent, and I think we talked about it after this tournament. Obviously, looking back to the first Four Nations Championship 2 years ago, obviously we lost to England. I think it was it's like something in the 80s to 8, and obviously the final at the weekend was it 30-point difference in the end?
This weekend, yeah. The last game was the finals this weekend. Was it 52 to 26, something like that? Yeah.
I think so.
Or 28, something like that. So yeah, nearly 30-point difference. Yeah. Which is a good score.
So it's getting, obviously the top of the tree is probably getting a little bit closer, but like we were talking off air, obviously you've got a lot of players that weren't available for the tournament, so you've still got some of the better players to come in, so obviously the gap is getting smaller, but in my opinion, obviously there's still another level that the other teams have got to get to, and then obviously you've still got the French to come back into that mix.
Yeah, the French are a very strong side as well. Yeah, definitely. I think somewhere where Wales could maybe, because I think attack-wise that you did quite well, and I think there was a problem maybe in defence where gaps would create themselves pretty easily, and we managed to get through a few times. So you could definitely work on some things like defence.
Well, you can always, all teams can always work on something. There's never a finished article. It's always, I don't know if obviously it's on YouTube, so the players can look back and analyse what they possibly did right or wrong. So that's probably a good thing of the one. Obviously, you can pause it, look at things. All this is what I thought he was going to do, but he did that. So you can say, well, what could I? Well, hypothetically, what I could have done differently. So you can always analyse the game that way, and obviously the coaching staff will probably look back at it anyway, and see. Well, they'll probably take notes and this player should have done this, and this is what he was instructed to do. So you can always, especially now, with obviously technology now, it's a lot easier to reflect on the game and watch it back straight away. Probably could have watched. You could probably watch it back straight away, not long after the game was finished. So it's.
You can watch it back. Yeah.
So it's probably I would say probably where I probably struggled was probably the defensive side of it, but that's probably because I've not been able to play a lot of the games this season, so obviously it's got playing wheelchair basketball to playing rugby league is completely different. Oh, the only similarity is probably the wheelchair, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So and then like you were saying, obviously off air, we were talking a little bit about the facilities, and you were saying obviously handball is very big in France, and that's predominantly where you play the courts. Is that, how would I say it? Is that one of the reasons you believe that Wheelchair Rugby League is probably that much further ahead than, say, the sport in the UK as a result of the facilities?
I think very possibly because I mean with the facilities, obviously we have the big courts, but that's not all. I mean we also have all these all the space for a lot of people to come and watch the games. So the more people you come and get to watch the games, the more people discover the sport and get talking about it to other people. So then even more people manage to join the sport. So then you get more and more people joining the sport, and obviously, I mean, if you have a larger choice, you can select you obviously get better players. In the little amount. So yeah, definitely, I think the venues are a strong point for us. Like it really helps us like making the sport bigger, which is a shame in England, really.
And you were saying off air, you generally on average get about, what was it, about a few thousand for league games?
But for final games, like finals and semi-finals, we'll get 1,000, 1,500, possibly 2,000 people. And then then club, I mean, just throughout the year games, it can vary between. I mean, we'll always have a minimum of 500 people, and then obviously the tougher games, the hardest games, like when we play against the strongest team after us, for example. I mean, would get nearly the same amount as in the final. So a lot more people than in England, definitely. Yeah.
And do you think it's because obviously I look a little bit as to what's going on in France. Do you believe, obviously, I think it's very well promoted to the local media. Do you think that's probably a big reason that you get that the number of spectators that you do, because it's well publicised?
Yeah, well, we try to get posters out as soon as possible for the game, so we try and put them everywhere we can. A lot of shops and a bit of everywhere in town, for example, in schools. Then we obviously share it a lot on Facebook and try and invite the most people over, which works actually really well. And nowadays, the internet's really good way of getting the message around. And then it's just mouth to mouth. I mean, inviting your own friends who invite their own friends, and really pushing for them to come over and watch the sport. And I mean, a lot of people have a lot of people have difficulties like coming over for the first time because they think, oh, wheelchair rugby, oh, well, it's in a wheelchair, it's going to be boring. And then when they actually come over, they realise that it's actually a really exciting sport, not only to watch but also to play. And they really enjoy it, and then they come back. And then obviously, if you have people that come and then come back, and then there's more people that are starting to come, and then they also come back, you just gradually get more and more people coming over.
And then to move on from that point, can you explain to the listeners what is the difference between, obviously, oh god, we've got about 3 different versions of rugby, wheelchair rugby now, haven't we? You've obviously got wheelchair rugby, murder ball, you've got rugby league, and then you also got sevens now coming in. How does the game differ between wheelchair rugby league and, say, rugby league?
So the difference between wheelchair rugby league and rugby league, I think that we've really managed to have a sport that's extremely similar to the running game. I mean, the only difference being the kicks are with our hands, obviously, because we can't use our legs, and then all this tag system, which is, I think, very, very interesting, and it's slightly different to the running game, but we have to get our own strategies into place, and I think that's something that's really interesting. Whereas wheelchair sevens, I've tried quite recently, actually. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a potential in this sport, but for the moment, it's they've tried to adapt some rules. I wasn't completely satisfied by the game. I mean, they did the touch like in rugby union. And that's quite interesting. But then they also did the what do you call them?
The maul.
Yeah, the mauls. So I thought that, I mean, 3 wheelchairs, like one behind the other and pushing. I didn't think it was as interesting, and it could very quickly get quite messy because you don't have the tag system. So there's no when to qualify a tackle, it's when two players get into contact with one attacker. So and it's just wheelchair contact. So it could be from behind, from in front, it could be anywhere, and you just have to stop and just play the ball straight away.
So it's a bit more reckless.
I definitely think that it's a bit reckless for the moment, and that I think Wheelchair Rugby League is way more precise and structured for the moment. And then to finish with Murderball, that they only took the name of Wheelchair Rugby to have a catchy name, but it's absolutely got nothing to do with rugby. It's so they play with a round ball, they throw the ball in front of them. It's basically a mixture of American football with handball kind of thing. I mean, it's a completely different sport. It's nothing to do with rugby. So and then obviously I can't play the game because it's reserved for people that have at least 3 of their limbs affected. So I've only got one leg cut, so I don't want to cut 2 other things. I prefer playing rugby league, which I find really exciting.
Yeah. Well, to kind of put it in perspective, they've probably all got different. Well, rugby sevens has obviously got a long way to go. Obviously, like you say, the contact from behind. Obviously, you do that in league, it'd be a penalty. So they've probably got some way to go to probably fine tune the rules. I wouldn't. From my perspective, I would say rugby league has probably they could probably fine tune some of the rules. I don't know if that's something you'd agree with. There's still some tweaks they could probably mess around with.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rules are gradually changing a little bit each year. There's always slight changes every year to trying to make it as best as possible and as close as we can to the running game.
And then obviously you've got, especially in games, you've still got the referee's interpretation of what the laws are. So obviously, there's some calls you might not. Well, let's put it into perspective to the listeners. There's probably some tries both ways in that final. I was thinking, well, why is that given and why is that not given? And obviously, that's an interpretation of the rules.
That's definitely a fact. But then I've always learned in rugby that I just close my mouth, listen to the ref, and then if I don't understand his choice, I would go and see him after and ask him to explain nicely and calmly, and then we just get along with it. Obviously, there's some decisions that are weird, but then it's really difficult as a ref to get every single decision right, and everyone has a different interpretation of the rules at the moment, as you say. So hopefully one day it will all be all the same everywhere in the world, and all the refs will be as competent as possible.
But like you say, it's kind of accepting the decision because, how would I put it? I've had a referee say to me, from the basketball side, obviously he was saying to me, we make mistakes, and he kind of flipped it on its head. Do you make a mistake in games? And obviously, it's gonna happen. So, that put it in perspective. Okay, they're only human beings. There's gonna be times they're gonna make mistakes, and obviously, if they can own up to it, obviously you're gonna make a mistake. It's the sooner you forget about it, the better. But like he's put it in perspective. Obviously, you make mistakes in games, so you can't. Well, you don't generally want another player saying, why did you do that? Because it just makes the situation a lot better. And then obviously from the flip side of that, if you moan about the decisions too much, you've now created, rugby league, for the listeners, it's 5 against 5. You'd rather not make it 6 against 5 by mouthing off all the time.
Yeah. I know, if you start messing around and like getting annoyed at the ref, not only is the ref going to lose it, but you're going to lose it as well. I mean, this is so. My friends from Catalan were explaining to me about their game on Friday, where they're playing against this new super team. the other side was going mad at the ref and kept shouting, and our side just stayed really calm. And then just between them, their own players, they just started getting mad, shouting all the time at each other and at the ref, etc. And when you start doing that, you just lose the game. You're not in the game anymore, and you can't perform as well. So you just have to keep your mouth shut, ready, and play on with the game, even if some decisions are a bit weird. Yeah. I mean, in the end, if you're the better team, even with some strange decisions, you can get through.
Well, they are. Well, generally the decisions iron themselves out. Obviously, if you get one bad decision in one facet of the game, it should in theory level itself out, and you'll get a decision go your way later on in the game.
Yeah, but in my memory, it started with a try on our side, where I passed the ball to James, and James kicked the ball, and they interpreted that as a forward pass. It was actually a kick, and you can actually check on the video. And so they considered that as a no try, and so we weren't very happy about that. But then a few minutes later, you scored a try that they said was a no try, and it was most certainly a try as well. So I think, it does even out most of the time. Yeah.
Well, they can't refer back to a video referee and things like that, but well, in theory they probably could now because it's being streamed live. You could rewind it and look back at it. So in future, it's probably something they could probably look at doing.
I mean, when it starts getting bigger and bigger and more people watching, and obviously we're going to get better cameras and better views of the sport. So after a while, when it gets more professional, a bit like wheelchair basketball, we will manage to maybe use video reffing, and that would be a huge step. That would be brilliant.
Yeah. And we were talking off air a little bit about it. Obviously, you're getting ready now for your domestic season. Can you describe how long that season lasts?
Well, we started training end of August, and the first game is actually the 22nd of October. So we try to start training at least 2 months ahead, and then the season will start on the 22nd of October. And the last game will be of the championship before the playoffs will be end of April, and then we have semi-finals in the middle of May, and then the finals at the end of May.
Okay, and then how many teams are in the French domestic championship?
Well, so that's just slightly changed this year now because of a few things. So before it was we have 3 divisions. So there's 8 teams in the Elite 1, which is like the higher division, and there was approximately the same in the second division, which is Elite 2, and then there was like the development teams, where I'm really not certain how many teams there are. And then this year, 2 teams have decided to go down from Elite 1 to Elite 2. So now we're only 6 teams now in the high division of the Wheelchair Rugby League in France. 6 teams, yeah.
And in that case, do you have a promotion and relegation, or is it kind of fixed divisions?
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
If you finish, say, bottom of Elite 1, would you get relegated to Elite 2?
Normally, yeah. Normally the last goes down to Elite 2 and the first goes up to Elite 1. But we've had some problems where last year the winners of Elite 2 didn't feel ready and didn't want to come into Elite 1 and decided to stay in Elite 2. So I mean, if that happens, what can we say really? If they want to stay in Elite 2, they stay in Elite 2. So, but that's normally what happens, yeah.
Trying to think. Is it in the rules that they can stay down? Because obviously they'll be better than everybody else in Elite 2 because they've won the championship.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would have thought that they would have to come up into Elite. I mean, they won the Elite 2 and everything, but then you try and remember that it's not a professional sport yet, and obviously it's just people. A lot of people people with disabilities that are just trying to get into a sport and have fun. And if they don't want to bring it to the high competition level where we play a lot more aggressively and where it's really high competition in elite, and obviously everyone's like really into it and trying to do as best as they can. If they want to keep it as a pleasant sport and just want to have fun, I understand their choice of wanting to stay in the do so. No one really complained about that decision.
Okay, and then how would I put this? What's well, obviously you've got 6 teams now in Elite A. How far would you have to travel to get to another team, for example?
Well, fortunately for us, rugby in general is mostly in the south in France. So most of the teams are quite close. So they're like, and when I say close, so there would be there's 2 hours to Toulouse. There's the most would be we have to go to the very west of France where we play against Bordeaux, is Biarritz, and that's a 5-6 hours of drive. Or if we also play against Vichy, which is next to Clermont-Ferrand, which is a big city in France, and that's about 6 hours as well. And then most of the time it's just 2 hour drive. Most of the other teams, 2 hour drive.
That's not too bad, and obviously, put that perspective for the listeners. Obviously, we went in the UK. It's kind of gone regionalised. Obviously, the only difference was it now they've kind of split it into similar to that out in France. There's a 3-tier system. A little bit, no, two. I get that right. 2-tier system. Obviously, Division 2 is split north-south, and obviously the Premiership is, well, this season was 4 teams. Obviously, you've got Halifax, who won the championship overall, Leeds, North Wales over in Wales, and then Medway, who's based down in Kent. So, obviously, when you get to the higher level, you've got to travel a bit more. So, I think they kind of split the divisions in north and south. Obviously, like you were saying, Sebastien, a little bit like division the development league in France. Obviously, so the teams don't have to travel that much, and they can get a little bit more out of either through enjoyment or just progressing their game. Obviously, until they get up higher in the divisions and progress, and then obviously, get to the Premier Division, what it's called in the UK. I don't know if they're going to look to expand it or not, but it's just waiting to see. And obviously, as Sebastien and I were discussing off air, obviously he was saying the Catalan is the benchmark in France. You were saying about 4 teams you believe could probably beat Halifax.
Yeah, at least, well, with us, 3 other teams other than us, yeah, I'm pretty sure could.
And then I've heard through the grapevine that Leyland is probably going to come back into the league, and obviously they're probably going to have to start down. Only naturally, they have to start down the bottom and start over again. And obviously, I see them. They probably win the North quite easily, and they'll be back in the Premier Division. Well, in 2 years' time. So obviously, it's good for the sport in this country. Obviously, having what was the best team in the country back in the sport, and obviously you were saying 2 years ago you had that European Championship against them home and away, which Catalan won. So, and you were saying off air you'd like to play Halifax, and obviously it's only good for the game, obviously at club level, to have that competition, and obviously have that, I won't say a rivalry as such, but this is the benchmark you've got within France, and just trying to close that as much as possible. So, but yeah, obviously, and then I don't know, I can't think of anything more, but I think we'll wrap up the podcast there. Thank you very much for taking your time out and coming on the show, Sebastien.
Thank you to you, James.
And I'll put it out to you. If anybody wanted to get in touch with you on social media, how would they go about doing that? Obviously, to find out maybe a little bit more about the sport. How would they? What's the best form of way of getting in contact with you?
Well, probably through Facebook. I mean, I'm on Facebook. They can definitely message me on Facebook. I've got an email address. They could send me some emails if they would have a few questions. I can spell that out. It's BECH.SEB@gmail.com. Any questions about rugby or how I adapt to gym with my amputation or anything? Yeah, Facebook or email. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me.